I'm Ree, and you're tuned into Written Articles on Camera.
Kyle.
Were you born in America?
Yes, I was born in Queens, New York.
What is your, I'm gonna say both. What is your nationality? What is your ethnicity? I feel like both is a good.
So I guess my nationality would probably be American. I'm a New Yorker. My ethnicity would probably be West Indian. Both of my parents are from the Caribbean. St. Thomas, BVI to be specific. St. Thomas, BVI to be specific.
I didn't hear that part, my bad. What is your age?
I'm 31 years old.
What was your first encounter dealing with violence in America?
You mean in terms of like something I viewed or just something directly in front of me? Like,
it could be both.
I would have to say it's probably watching the show Roots. That's like the first kind of thing I can remember about violence, like seeing how like a slave getting beat.
How does that affect you mentally, emotionally, physically?
At the time, it probably caused a little bit of fear, but now it's just real life. That's just kind of how things work.
Why would you consider it real life?
Well, because there's violence and conflict. That's just part of the human experience.
Define the human experience in America.
I would say in reality, it's a rat race. It's really just a continuous chase to try to find your own form of success.
Define racism in America.
But what I think people are trying to get at when they say racism is just a cultural difference, a form of cultural superiority between the different cultures that exist here in America.
What is your definition of racism?
My definition would be it's a concept, it's an idea based on the idea of race, but in reality it's just a matter of the differences between two cultures and it being shown in a more conflictory kind of fashion.
Do you believe in colorism?
Not in terms of human beings, no.
Define oppression based on racism.
Define oppression
Yes.
based on racism? It would be a matter of one culture trying to keep another culture from ever rising above their current state of living. I think that's the form of oppression. So it could be in terms of things of laws. Laws is a form of actual oppression.
Do you feel that you are oppressed?
Oh, not at all. Because oppression is a mind state.
How do you feel being a Black man in America?
It doesn't come across my mind in that sense. Like, to me, I'm just living my own life and in this country that I live in. But in terms of my culture and how it represents itself in this country, we're not the highest level of culture. We're not the most respected. But I feel like it's just any other country. It depends on what family you come from. That's really how you live within that country. So in America, based on the family I come from, that's the socioeconomic class that I'm in.
Define class.
Your level of economic ability based on where you come from and your background.
Do you feel like being Black, your class can constantly be heightened?
Absolutely.
Or do you stay where you are?
I feel absolutely. That's why, again, I don't really believe in color. To say that there's not any wealthy Black people in America, that's false. To say that there hasn't been a Black person that started off at a lower economic level and hasn't raised himself above that, that would be false. So I feel like, yeah, there is no real limitation to a Black person or quote unquote Black person's ability to raise in class.
Does gender play a part on being Black in America?
Oh, gender always plays a part. Absolutely. Just the differences. The woman and the man are different by nature. And I think that plays itself out in different ways. Sometimes ignorantly, sometimes cooperatively.
What violence have you come encounter with physically?
What's it like?
No. In terms of race, in terms of police, and in terms of let's do race and police first, so I could go into my next.
So you want to, let's say, start with just different races?
Yeah, violence in terms of race, yeah. And then in terms of...
Well, in terms of other races, not really any violence with other races. I mean, of course, grew up in New York City, so it's a very much a melting pot. And if you get into a little bit of quote unquote smoke, it doesn't really matter who the culture is. You're gonna get into some smoke with all different cultures if you come up in New York. So I've had situations with Asians, I've had situations with quote unquote Caucasians, I've had situations with Indian, all different cultures and races. Not necessarily violence, but different forms of confliction. And in terms of the second question was any kind of violence with police, I've definitely been, in a sense, beat up by cops before during a stop. I've had different levels of them, quote unquote, abusing me. But that could go with anybody that kind of argues back with the cops. It's not necessarily, it was my culture. The reason why we had that problem is more or less, I was very I wasn't trying to listen to what he had to say. And then there was more of them that came and they overpowered me.
We're gonna we're gonna go into police brutality. How do you feel in general about what's going on in America right now?
How do I feel about what's going on in America? I feel like there's nothing new. I feel like people are acting like this is like things are changing. I don't think nothing's changing. I think this is literally America. This is just bottom line what it is.
That goes right into my question. That's crazy. Do you understand or believe that the past repeats itself in the future? Do you think that it's happening now?
Absolutely, in the sense of the reason why there's so much conflict or discourse between urban communities and policing, it has nothing to do with the people themselves. It has everything to do with the laws in place. If you have laws that are against particular cultures and environments, the police is there to enforce the laws, so they'll always come up in conflicts with those communities. Specifically, we could start with just the right to bear arms. If it's a constitutional right, and you have certain communities that do not have access to legalize or legally obtain these firearms, the police will now have an issue just by virtue of trying to enforce that law of being able to legalize owning a weapon through that community, which a lot of the quote unquote urban or black people go to jail for, a lot of gun possession, when it's our constitutional right to actually bear arms. But the cops, their job is to actually enforce anybody that doesn't have a legal weapon to take that weapon for them and arrest them or criminalize them. And that's one of the biggest reasons why the communities do not see eye to eye. It's about laws. It's not so much a color thing.
Do you feel that because you said that, do you feel that police naturally are just going to profile?
No, I don't think they're necessarily profiling me in the sense that they look at me a certain way. But the reality of it is, human beings, we naturally stereotype everything. Every time we look at a fridge, every time we look at a pigeon, every time we look at a car, we have a preconceived notion of whatever that item is. So the idea that they're not going to see us, if they're not the same culture, they're going to have a preconceived notion of whatever that culture is based on whatever they've experienced or whatever they come in front of or whatever they've been exposed to of that culture. So I don't think it's a profiling thing. I think we all naturally, if I run into a Latino, I'm going to have a perception or preconceived notion about that Latino because I am not Latino. That's not racism. So I don't think cops necessarily profile, but the same as like their job is to literally protect a community. They have to come into that and have a preconceived understanding of how they're going to keep that situation safe. And however that person is, he might be a threat, he might not be a threat. They have to actually have an idea whether or not that person's a threat, regardless of what that person's culture is.
So you've watched American Skin.
Yes.
Why do you feel that police officer that was being accused was profiling him or stereotyping him?
The officer that was accusing, which one?
No, the one that was, the one, there was only one. There was only one.
I mean, there was the two officers that kind of messed up, and then there's the actual main character.
No, the one officer that was on trial and the actual,
okay,
yes.
Yeah. So enough. Okay, do I think that he profiled?
Did he profile him or did he stereotype him?
I would say profile him, because the stereotype what he would do, because this was two black guys, it was because he saw two black guys in the car, he automatically assumed they were thieves. That's not what he said during the trial. He basically said that given the type of car you guys was driving in, given the time that it was, usually that would be somebody that's up to no good. And then when we approach y'all didn't have a reason to be there, that usually would indicate y'all were up to no good. So that to me, that's profiling. That regardless of the color, he's just telling you what would be the indications if something was amiss.
And after that, did he profile him or did he stereotype him as he continued
I think
to speak to him?
At that point, it becomes you got to kind of ask him that, because at that point, he's kind of in the motion. I don't know if he's ever had, pre-events of that nature with that culture. That would not let me know, is he profiling, stereotyping. If he had never had any emotions with that culture, he's probably stereotyping. But if he'd been many occasions that he had with that same culture, that's really just profiling. He's just kind of seeing it as it comes to him. But if he has previous experience, or if he doesn't have previous experience, he's stereotyping, because he has nothing previous for him to build off of.
Do you feel that cop was right?
I don't think there's such thing as right and wrong. It's kind of his life and kind of his choices. It's his decisions. Now, did he handle it the best way possible? Of course not. Because again, somebody's dead now. You can't say you did your job well if somebody passed away.
So we're gonna stay on this movie.
Okay.
Define revenge.
I think it's you trying to seek a validation for something that was done to you.
Do you feel that white people are trying to gain some type of revenge in general? No, for real. Like, let me hear.
Nah, not at all.
What do you think black people are trying to do in America in terms of
Yeah.
power?
Well, I think the so-called black community is trying to actually unify itself, and I think that's where it's at right now. It's still a process of unification. They haven't found an umbrella and a culture that we can actually put our base and our foundation behind and actually now build around it.
Sometimes I just be stuck, like, there's so many like questions like to ask. Okay.
You can stay on that revenge topic. It's either you was getting at something there, like, do you think that it's really a class war, it's really a race war that's actually going on in America?
It's multiple wars. It's different. It's many different wars. Like there's wars within our race. There's wars outside our race. There's wars between men and women. Like there's wars everywhere within everything. And I feel that being black in America is a war every day. Like I have to fight to do something or get something, is
that any different for anybody though?
It's not. But it's like, for example, I'm gonna use me. Like, you see me, I'm a black woman, but you see my name now, I'm Hispanic. Like now it's double something on me. Now I got it a little worse. And it's like, why is that? And then on top of that, now it's 3 times because I'm a female. Now I'm a woman. Like, so, you know, like now it's even worse. So it's like, why is, because of the color of my skin, because I am darker, because I am a woman, why is this any different from a white woman or a white man or anybody else? Okay. It's a war.
But that's not but I assume, well, okay, let me rephrase this then. We take this perception that that each person is conscious of what they're doing to somebody else. If I don't tell somebody that you're being racist, he doesn't know it. So the idea of racism is a concept. So even the idea that in America it's a race war. No, this is human beings. You go to any country or any place or any land in the world and you put a group of human beings together, they'll eventually start clicking up. They'll eventually start separating themselves from each other in different fashions. They'll start to now look at other people as different. Okay, we all like to eat oranges. Why don't you like to eat oranges? Oh, he's a non-orange eater. And it's like, that's the same exact thing as what we've seen. It's just we're calling it black or we're calling it, the white man. Versus we just simply saying like, oh, everybody here is over 6 feet tall, but you're under 5'5", so you're too short to be with us. You're a midget. We don't like midgets. And it's like, it's really just differences that create those conflicts that we have. Like even the idea of nationalism, pride in yourself is literally what racism could be is. So for instance, if I say that I love my country, another way of me saying I don't love any other country. So if the idea of Black Lives Matter, it's also saying no other lives matter. It's like, why do you need to kind of point that out, so to speak? So I would say in that sense, like, no, I don't really think it's particularly a war. Like, you're only in war if you think you are. So it's like, am I in war every day with my car? Like, do I need it to save more gas? So me and it is battling for it to save more gas for me? Not really. It's more or less it's a choice that I'm making. Like, I could slow down, we could save more gas together. And again, the same as with the whole idea of white and black. If we stop considering it, like if I stop calling myself a black man, there's no reason for the other group to look at me as such. And the same goes, if I stop calling him a white man, there's no reason for there to be any kind of cultural differences. But we want to name ourselves though. We want to identify with something. And that identification is going to create conflict. The minute I say that, okay, I'm the best dressed guy in the world, there's another guy that's going to be like, oh, I hate him because I think I'm the best dressed man in the world. And there might be a woman now that hates me, like, who the hell does he think he is to call himself the best dressed man in the world? He's not that. That's where the hate comes from. The minute you identify yourself with something, somebody else is going to be on the opposite side of that fence. And that's not hate. That's not right or wrong. That's just differences. But we just don't know how to handle our differences well.
I know, guys, I'm not bothering you guys. I'll be moving, right? I'm sorry. It's a habit. I'll be like,
I'm good,
I feel like I'll be distracting people moving around.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. I said that so you can say all of that though. Got you, see, Abby.
Appreciate you.
Do you have anything extra that you would like to say? Anything extra, and then your advice to people who think differently than you. I feel like that's the best thing to say.
All right, so my general opinion would be is the idea of being black in America is a stigmatized concept. It's a lot of propaganda and just a lot of basically entertainment purposes. But then when you get down to the real history of it, like a culture is not a color. Like people are not on the spectrum of light, which is a color. Like that, we're not like, we're actually real people. We have real names and we have real history. So I think the biggest thing I'll try to explain to people is like, get into your history, understand who you really are, and don't look at it in terms of identifying with this culture, that name, or that group. Like even the idea of African American is true. There's a truth to that. Like the same as you say Asian American, the same way you say Latino American, Africa is a real continent, and a lot of our cultures come from Africa. That's the biggest, set of darker hued people in the world. So this idea that in itself, we shouldn't call ourselves that. We should call ourselves black or the Negro. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You're just trying to jump to another color. Negro just means black, and black is, again, it's a spectrum of light. I am not a color. Like I'm literally a person. Like my parents are from the Caribbean. I'm born and raised in Queens, New York. My name is Kyle. There's no color in this. My identification is right here. You can ask me. So I would say, people, again, get into your history. Get to know who you are. Like your parents might come from a tribe. The Native Americans, or what they call the Native Americans, they've been here. They've been here. They came from other places too. So this didn't start when Columbus got here. And Christopher Columbus did discover America. Like people seem to have a problem with that. They seem to think that that's ridiculous or that's crazy. Like, okay, the idea of discovery, you're discovering it for somebody else. Christopher Columbus was requested by Spain to go see whether or not they could make money in the West Indies. He stumbled upon not even North America. That's why America's not named Columbus. He found what he found. He went back and said, like, yo, we could make some gold. We could get some slaves. We could do some things. We could colonize. Yeah, he discovered it for the Queen of Spain. Like, yes, he did that. So to this day, yes, he discovered America for those people. But it's not part of this, like the United States of America's history. It's just part of the narrative. It's part of the story. It's part of his story, their narrative. Like, so if you want to see the real story, you have to dig a little further. Most people are not doing that. They just believe in what they was taught in school, which is just somebody else's story. You can look for your story. So I think that's the only suggestion I have for people. Like, you can go ahead and look for your real story and find out who you really are, what you really identify with, and stop trying to let somebody tell you that you're some spectrum of light.